Phoenix, Arizona, August 19th, 1996. The merciless desert sun beat down on the city, the temperature climbing past 105 degrees by midday. Inside the Mayo Clinic's air-conditioned sanctuary, Muhammad Ali sat motionless in a wheelchair, his once powerful hands trembling uncontrollably in his lap. The greatest of all time, the man who had floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee, who had defied governments and conventions, who had become not just a boxing champion but a global icon for justice and self-determination, now struggled to lift a glass of water to his lips. Dr. Abraham Leibowitz, a world-renowned neurologist who had flown in from Johns Hopkins specifically to examine Ali, closed his medical chart with a sigh that seemed to echo through the silent room. He exchanged glances with the team of specialists gathered around, their expressions conveying what words couldn't or wouldn't. "I'm afraid there's been significant progression of the Parkinson's, Mr. Ali, Doctor," Leibowitz said, addressing the former champion directly despite the common medical practice of speaking to family members when patients had cognitive difficulties. But everyone in that room knew Muhammad Ali deserved the dignity of direct address, regardless of his condition. The new medication protocol we implemented 6 months ago hasn't yielded the results we hoped for. The tremors are increasing in frequency and severity, and the rigidity in your upper body is compromising your respiratory function. Lonnie Ali, Muhammad's wife and devoted caretaker, squeezed her husband's shoulder gently. "What are our options, Doctor?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. Dr. Leibowitz removed his glasses, a gesture that physicians often use when transitioning from clinical assessment to human connection. "Mrs. Ali, we've explored every FDA-approved treatment available. We've tried experimental protocols that show promise. Mr. Ali has been exceptionally compliant with physical therapy, medication schedules, and dietary recommendations." He paused, struggling with the weight of his next words. "At this stage, we can adjust medications to manage symptoms as best we can, but I must be honest, we're running out of medical options to slow the progression." The room fell silent. Through the window, the distant Phoenix Mountains shimmered in the heat, indifferent to the human drama unfolding in their shadow. Then, unexpectedly, Muhammad Ali's voice broke through the silence. Though slurred and soft, a ghost of his once booming declarations, his words carried the same defiance that had defined his life. "Doc," he said, each syllable a battle won. "When I fought Foreman, everyone said he'd kill me, but I'm still here." A sad smile crossed Dr. Leibowitz's face. "Yes, Mr. Ali, you certainly are, and your fighting spirit is remarkable. But this opponent, this disease, it fights differently than any human you've faced in the ring." Ali's eyes, still sharp and perceptive despite his physical decline, locked onto the doctor's. "There's always another way." Those 4 words hung in the air like a prophecy. Later that afternoon, as the medical team dispersed and the Ali's prepared to return to their temporary residence in Scottsdale, an unexpected visitor arrived at the clinic. A young intern, barely 23 years old, hesitantly approached Lonnie Ali in the hallway. "Mrs. Ali," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but there's someone you might want to meet." Lonnie, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day's consultations, looked at the young woman with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. After years of being approached by well-meaning people, offering miracle cures and experimental treatments, she had developed a protective skepticism. "We've seen quite enough specialists today," she began gently. "It's not a doctor," the intern interrupted, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Well, people around here call her the Desert Healer. She's just a girl, really. Lives on the streets of Phoenix. But the things I've seen her do..." The intern stopped, seeming to reconsider the professional risk she was taking. "I know how this sounds. I'm a medical student. I believe in science. But 3 months ago, my grandmother couldn't walk after her stroke. The doctors here gave her the same speech they just gave your husband. Then this girl, she..." The intern's eyes filled with tears. "My grandmother danced at my brother's wedding last weekend." Lonnie studied the young woman's face, looking for signs of deception or delusion, finding only earnest conviction. "What's your name?" Lonnie asked. Sarah Dempsey. "And this healer. How would we find her?" Sarah hesitated. "That's the thing. You don't find her. She finds those who need her. But she's often at St. Vincent's Soup Kitchen on Thursdays. Tomorrow." As Lonnie helped Mohammed into their car minutes later, she debated whether to even mention the strange encounter. They had faced so many disappointments, pursued so many false hopes. Yet something about the intern's sincerity had touched her. "Mohammed," she said as they pulled away from the clinic, "what would you think about visiting a soup kitchen tomorrow?" Ali's eyes, still capable of conveying his trademark mischief despite his physical limitations, brightened. With tremendous effort, he formed 5 words that reminded Lonnie why she had fallen in love with this extraordinary man. Might find another way. What they would discover the next day at St. Vincent's would defy medical explanation and capture the attention of the world. But the true miracle wouldn't be what most people thought, or what the headlines would proclaim. If this story has made you feel something already, however small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. St. Vincent de Paul's Soup Kitchen occupied a modest brick building in one of Phoenix's most troubled neighborhoods. The line for the Thursday lunch service stretched around the block, a human chain of the city's forgotten souls seeking nourishment in the relentless heat. Lonnie parked their nondescript sedan a block away. Mohammed had insisted on wearing a simple baseball cap and sunglasses rather than the fine clothes he typically wore for public appearances. Even in his diminished physical state, he understood the importance of dignity, especially for those who had little else. "Are you sure about this?" Lonnie asked, her hand resting protectively on his arm. The medical consensus delivered yesterday still weighed heavily on her mind. Perhaps it was foolish to exhaust Mohammed with this wild goose chase based on an intern's unlikely story. Ali's response was to reach for the door handle with determined, if trembling, fingers. As they made their way slowly toward the entrance, Lonnie noticed how few people recognized the former champion. Time and illness had transformed the once unmistakable face that had graced magazine covers and television screens worldwide. This anonymity, she realized, might be a blessing today. Inside, the soup kitchen was a hive of organized chaos. Volunteers in aprons ladled out steaming soup and handed out sandwiches. The room buzzed with conversation, occasional laughter, and the clatter of plastic trays and utensils. Lonnie helped Mohammed settle at a corner table, then joined the line to get them both some lunch, an experience so removed from their usual lifestyle that it felt almost surreal. When she returned with 2 bowls of vegetable soup and some bread, she found her husband watching the room with alert, interested eyes. "Do you see anyone who looks like they might be this healer?" she asked quietly. Mohammed slowly shook his head, then used his eyes to direct her attention across the room. Following his gaze, Lonnie saw nothing remarkable at first, just a young black girl, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, sitting alone, hunched over her soup. The child wore faded jeans with patches at the knees and a boy's t-shirt several sizes too large. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, revealing a face that seemed both childlike and strangely ancient. "That's just a child, Muhammad," Lonnie whispered. "The intern must have meant someone else." But as they watched, something extraordinary happened. An elderly man at a nearby table suddenly clutched his chest, his face contorting in pain. His metal spoon clattered to the floor as he gasped for breath, the unmistakable signs of a heart attack. Several volunteers rushed toward him. Someone shouted for an ambulance, and the room erupted in concerned murmurs. But before anyone reached the man, the young girl, Lonnie and Muhammad, had been observing calmly stood up, walked over to the distressed man, and placed both her small hands on his shoulders. The room gradually fell silent as people noticed the strange tableau, a child standing before an elderly man in medical distress, her expression serene, almost detached. For perhaps 30 seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then, astonishingly, the man's labored breathing eased. The pained expression on his face relaxed. Color returned to his cheeks. When the girl removed her hands and quietly returned to her seat, the man looked around in confusion, then picked up his fallen spoon and resumed eating as if nothing had happened. The volunteers hovered uncertainly, asking if he was all right. The man seemed genuinely perplexed by their concern. "Never felt better," he assured them, patting his chest. "Must have been indigestion." Lonnie and Muhammad exchanged glances of disbelief. Had they really just witnessed what appeared to be a child stopping a heart attack with nothing but her touch? "Muhammad," Lonnie whispered, "do you think that's—" Before she could finish, the girl stood up again, her empty soup bowl in hand. As she turned to leave, her eyes met Muhammad Ali's across the room. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the aging champion and the strange child, as if recognizing something familiar in one another. Then, without warning, the girl walked directly to their table. Up close, Lonnie could see that her large, dark eyes held a wisdom that seemed impossible for someone so young. "You're Muhammad Ali," the girl said matter-of-factly. Not a question, not an exclamation of celebrity recognition, but a simple statement of truth. Ali nodded, the movement requiring visible effort. "I'm Cassandra," the girl said, "but people call me Cassie." She placed her empty bowl on their table and pulled up a chair without waiting for an invitation. "You came to find me," Lonnie, recovering from her shock, leaned forward. Are you the one they call the Desert Healer?" Cassie's face showed no reaction to the title. "I just help people sometimes," she said with a child's directness. "When I can." "What you just did for that man," Lonnie began. "He wasn't ready to go yet," Cassie interrupted. "He has grandchildren coming to visit next week." She said this as if it explained everything, then turned her full attention to Muhammad. "You fought too hard for too long. That's why your body is punishing you now." The blunt assessment, delivered in a child's innocent tone, might have seemed cruel coming from anyone else. But there was such clarity in her statement, such absence of pity or judgment, that it cut through pretense like a surgeon's scalpel. "Can you help him?" Lonnie asked, unable to keep the desperate hope from her voice. Cassie studied Muhammad's face for a long moment. "Not here," she finally said. "Too many people. Too many eyes." She stood up abruptly. "Meet me at Papago Park tomorrow at sunrise, by the big red rocks. Come alone." And with that, she walked away, disappearing into the bustling crowd of the soup kitchen before Lonnie could ask any more questions. "Muhammad," Lonnie said uncertainly, "what do you think? Should we really—" Ali's trembling hand reached across the table to cover hers. With tremendous effort, he formed the clearest sentence he had spoken in months. "What do we have to lose?" As they left the soup kitchen, neither of them noticed the middle-aged man in the corner who had been watching their interaction with intense interest. Nor did they see him follow Cassie out the door, a man who would play a crucial role in what would happen next. That night, as Muhammad slept fitfully in their Scottsdale rental home, Lonnie sat awake researching Papago Park and Desert Healer online. She found nothing about any miraculous healings or mysterious street children with unexplained powers. The rational part of her mind insisted this was all foolishness, a distraction from accepting the hard reality of Muhammad's prognosis. But she couldn't forget what she had witnessed in that soup kitchen. And she couldn't ignore the spark of hope she had seen in her husband's eyes for the first time in years. As dawn approached, she made her decision. They would go to Papago Park. They would meet this strange child. They would try another way. Little did they know that their sunrise meeting would not remain private for long, or that by sunset the world would be watching. Papago Park was eerily silent at 5:30 in the morning, the iconic red sandstone formations casting long shadows in the golden light of the approaching dawn. The desert air held the crisp coolness that would evaporate as soon as the sun climbed higher, a brief respite from Phoenix's brutal summer heat. Lonnie pushed Muhammad's wheelchair along the accessible path, following the directions to the hole in the rock, the park's famous geological formation. They had come alone as instructed, though Lonnie had left a note of their whereabouts for Muhammad's security team, a necessary precaution she couldn't bring herself to ignore completely. "I don't see her," Lonnie whispered, scanning the nearly empty park. A lone jogger passed by on a distant trail, and somewhere a cactus wren called out its distinctive rattling song. Muhammad raised a trembling hand, pointing toward a small figure perched atop a lower section of the red rocks. Cassie sat cross-legged about 20 feet off the ground, perfectly still, her face turned toward the rising sun. In the early morning light, with her oversized t-shirt billowing slightly in the breeze, she looked almost like some ancient desert spirit rather than a flesh-and-blood child. How did she get up there? Lonnie wondered aloud. "And how are we supposed to—" Before she could finish her thought, Cassie spotted them. With the agility of youth, she scrambled down the rock face and jogged over to where they waited. Up close, in the clear morning light, Lonnie noticed details she had missed in the dimness of the soup kitchen, faint scars on the girl's arms, the calloused toughness of her bare feet, the way her eyes constantly scanned their surroundings with the wariness of someone accustomed to danger. "You came," Cassie said, sounding faintly surprised despite having arranged the meeting herself. "We did," Lonnie confirmed. "Though I'm not entirely sure why." Cassie nodded, as if this uncertainty was expected. She approached Muhammad's wheelchair and knelt before him, her eyes level with his. "The greatest," she said softly, the title carrying none of the showmanship with which it was usually pronounced, but rather a simple acknowledgement of truth. "Do you know who I am?" she asked Ali directly. Muhammad's eyes, still sharp and intelligent despite his body's betrayal, focused on her face. With tremendous effort, he formed a single word: fighter. A smile flashed across Cassie's serious face, transforming her briefly into the child she actually was. "That's right, like you." The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. "The doctors told you they can't help anymore?" It wasn't a question, but Lonnie nodded anyway. "They've tried everything. The Parkinson's is progressing faster than they can counter it." Cassie continued to look directly at Muhammad, speaking to him rather than about him, a courtesy that medical professionals often forgot. "They're trying to fix the wrong thing," she said. "They're fighting the symptoms, but they don't see the real enemy." "What do you mean?" Lonnie asked. Finally, Cassie turned to her. "Your husband fought too hard for too long against things no one person should have to fight alone. His body is tired, yes, but his spirit is injured too. That's what the doctors can't see with their machines and their tests." She turned back to Muhammad. "You stood up when others wouldn't. You spoke when others couldn't. You fought inside the ring and out, and you paid a price for that." She placed her small hand gently on his chest, directly over his heart. "The greatest pain isn't in your muscles or your nerves. It's here." Muhammad's eyes widened slightly, a flash of recognition crossing his face. "I can help," Cassie continued, "but not like people think. I don't perform miracles. I just remind bodies how to heal themselves." And for that, we need space and silence. She stood up and looked around the increasingly bright park. There. She pointed to a small grove of Palo Verde trees that offered some privacy from the main path. We should go there before more people come. Lonnie hesitated. Despite what she had witnessed in the soup kitchen, a lifetime of rational thinking made her wary. Cassie, before we do this, can I ask how you do what you do? Where did this ability come from? The girl's expression remained impassive. My grandmother was a healer in Haiti before the soldiers came. She taught me some things before she died. The rest I figured out on my own. She shrugged, as if her extraordinary ability were no more remarkable than learning to ride a bicycle. It's just energy. Everything is energy. Most people forget how to feel it, but it's always there. With that cryptic explanation, she began walking toward the grove, clearly expecting them to follow. As Lonnie pushed Mohammed's wheelchair along the path, she noticed her husband seemed more alert, his eyes tracking Cassie with intense focus. For the first time in months, he seemed fully present, engaged in what was happening around him rather than trapped in the prison of his failing body. When they reached the small grove, Cassie instructed Lonnie to position Mohammed's wheelchair beside a smooth, flat rock. With surprising strength, the girl helped Mohammed out of the wheelchair and onto the rock, where he could sit more naturally, supported by the trunk of a Palo Verde tree. Now, Cassie said, kneeling in front of him, I need you to remember something important. Mohammed looked at her questioningly. Remember who you were before the world told you who you should be, before you were the greatest, before you were even Cassius Clay. Remember the boy who first felt the joy of his own strength, his own speed, his own potential. She placed both hands on his shoulders, her touch gentle but firm. Close your eyes and find that boy. Mohammed did as she instructed, his eyelids fluttering closed. Breathe with me, Cassie said, demonstrating a slow, deep breath. To Lonnie's surprise, Mohammed's typically shallow, labored breathing gradually synchronized with the girl's. What happened next would later be described, debated, and dissected by millions around the world. But in that moment, there were only 3 witnesses: Lonnie Ali, Muhammad Ali, and a hidden observer whose camera would capture everything from behind a nearby boulder. For nearly 7 minutes, Cassie and Muhammad remained perfectly still, connected by her hands on his shoulders, breathing in perfect unison. No incantations, no dramatic gestures, no mystical ceremonies, just profound stillness and silence. Then, slowly, the tremor in Muhammad's hands began to subside. At first, Lonnie thought she was imagining it, but as the minutes passed, the change became undeniable. The constant trembling that had characterized her husband's condition for years was visibly diminishing. His shoulders, typically hunched and rigid, began to relax. His breathing deepened. And then, in a movement so smooth it seemed impossible given his condition just minutes earlier, Muhammad Ali raised his right hand and placed it over Cassie's much smaller one on his shoulder. Tears sprang to Lonnie's eyes. It was the most controlled, intentional movement she had seen from her husband in years. Cassie opened her eyes and slowly removed her hands. "How do you feel?" she asked simply. Muhammad took a deep breath, deeper than Lonnie had seen him manage in recent memory. Then, with measured deliberation, he spoke, not in the slurred, effortful manner that had become his norm, but with a clarity that made Lonnie's heart leap. "I feel lighter," he said. "Like something heavy has been lifted." "That's because it has," Cassie replied. "You've been carrying the weight of too many battles for too long. Your body was never meant to carry so much." She stood up, suddenly looking exhausted herself, as if the process had drained her own energy. "It won't last forever," she warned. "I can't cure Parkinson's. No one can. But I've reminded your body how to fight more efficiently, how to use its energy where it's needed most. As if to demonstrate, Mohammed carefully pushed himself to his feet. He stood, unassisted for the first time in months, his posture straighter, his balance steady. Lonnie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mohammed!" He turned toward her, a smile spreading across his face, that radiant, mischievous smile that had captivated the world decades ago. "Don't worry," he said, each word clear and distinct. "I won't start dancing just yet." The joke, and the clarity with which it was delivered, broke something open in Lonnie. She began to sob, overwhelmed by a hope she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Mohammed took 3 careful steps toward her and embraced her, his arms steady and strong around her shoulders. Over his shoulder, Lonnie looked at Cassie, who stood watching them with an expression that mingled satisfaction with something darker, perhaps sadness, perhaps resignation. "Thank you," Lonnie mouthed silently to the girl. "Thank you." Cassie nodded once, then glanced toward a boulder about 30 yards away. Her expression hardened. "You should go now," she said urgently. "Someone's watching us." Before Lonnie could respond, the girl turned and sprinted away, disappearing among the red rocks with the speed and agility of someone who had spent a lifetime evading pursuit. Mohammed and Lonnie stood together in the morning sunlight, his arms still around her shoulders, watching the spot where Cassie had vanished. "Do you think she was right?" Lonnie asked softly. "About someone watching?" Mohammed nodded. "The girl sees clearly," he said, each word still a small miracle of clarity. "But it doesn't matter now. What matters is what happens next." What happened next would indeed change everything, not just for Muhammad Ali, but for the mysterious girl called Cassie, and for millions around the world who would soon witness what many would call a modern miracle. By nightfall, the video of their encounter would go viral, capturing the imagination of a cynical world desperate for something to believe in. But as Mohammed and Lonnie made their way slowly back to their car, him walking with careful, deliberate steps while she hovered protectively at his side, they were simply a husband and wife experiencing a moment of unexpected grace in the quiet beauty of a desert morning. Neither of them could have predicted how quickly that privacy would be shattered, or how the world's reaction would set in motion events that would test them all in ways they couldn't imagine. By sunset that same day, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. The footage, shot from behind a boulder at Papago Park, was grainy but clear enough. Muhammad Ali, the legendary boxer whose physical decline had been documented for years, standing unaided, speaking clearly, even embracing his wife with steady arms. The transformation was undeniable, seemingly miraculous, and all apparently facilitated by a young girl in an oversized t-shirt and patched jeans. Cable news networks ran the footage on continuous loops. Medical experts debated possible explanations: spontaneous remission, the placebo effect, or elaborate hoax. Religious leaders claimed divine intervention. Skeptics insisted it must be digitally manipulated. Meanwhile, in the Ailey's rented Scottsdale home, the phone rang incessantly. Their security team had been doubled, reporters camped outside the gates. The Mayo Clinic issued a cautious statement, saying only that they were aware of the video circulating online and that Mr. Ali remains under their care. In the midst of this storm, Muhammad Ali sat in his living room watching the coverage with an expression of bemused detachment. The improvement in his condition remained evident, not a complete reversal of his Parkinson's symptoms, but a dramatic reduction in tremors, increased mobility, and clearer speech than he had managed in years. "They're calling it the miracle at Papago," Lonnie said, muting the television as yet another pundit began speculating about what had happened. "Everyone wants to know who she is." Muhammad nodded thoughtfully. "Poor child. We've put her in danger." "We didn't release that video," Lonnie reminded him. "Someone was spying on us, just like she warned. Doesn't matter who released it, the world is looking for her now." Muhammad's voice, though clearer than before, carried the weight of someone who understood all too well the double-edged sword of public attention. And they won't all be looking for the right reasons. His prediction proved prescient. By the next morning, a Phoenix tabloid had identified Cassie as Cassandra Toussaint, age 13, undocumented immigrant and possible victim of human trafficking. The article included details of her history that made Lonnie's heart ache. Orphaned during political violence in Haiti, brought to the United States by a distant relative who later abandoned her, living on the streets of Phoenix for the past 2 years. The article ended with a chilling line. Sources say local authorities are searching for the girl, both for her own protection and to investigate the nature of her alleged healing abilities. "They'll put her in the system," Lonnie said, setting the newspaper down with a troubled expression. "Foster care, or worse, deportation. After what she did for you, for us, we can't let that happen." Muhammad was already reaching for the phone. "Get me Dr. Leibowitz at the Mayo Clinic," he instructed his assistant, "and then call Robert from legal. We're going to need both medicine and law for what comes next." What came next was something no one expected, least of all the medical establishment that had pronounced Muhammad Ali's condition irreversible. 3 days after the video went viral, Muhammad Ali walked into the Mayo Clinic without assistance. He submitted to a comprehensive battery of tests under the supervision of Dr. Leibowitz and 3 other specialists. The results confirmed what the video had shown: significant improvement in motor function, reduced tremors, increased clarity of speech, and improved cognitive responses. "I can't explain it medically," Dr. Leibowitz admitted in a private consultation with the Ailey's. "The underlying pathology of your Parkinson's is still present, but it's as if your neurological system has reorganized itself to function more efficiently despite the damage. I've never seen anything like it. The girl said she reminded my body how to heal itself," Muhammad stated simply. "She said it wouldn't last forever, but it might give me some time." Dr. Leibowitz removed his glasses, that same gesture of transitioning from medical authority to human connection. "Mr. Ali, whatever happened, I strongly advise you to use this reprieve to put your affairs in order. Based on everything we know about Parkinson's, this improvement, however dramatic, is likely temporary." Muhammad nodded. "I understand, Doctor, and I intend to use whatever time I've been given, but not in the way you might think." That evening, Muhammad Ali did something he hadn't done in nearly a decade. He called a press conference. The world's media gathered in a conference room at the Mayo Clinic, buzzing with speculation. When Muhammad walked into the room unassisted, a collective gasp arose, followed by the frenzied clicking of cameras. For 22 minutes, the man once known for his poetic boasts and lightning-fast reflexes spoke to the world with renewed clarity and purpose. He acknowledged the video that everyone had seen, confirmed the remarkable improvement in his condition, and thanked the medical team at Mayo for their ongoing care. But the heart of his message was something else entirely. "Throughout my life," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in years, though still carrying the rasp of age and illness, "I've stood up for what I believed was right. I've fought in the ring and outside it. I've taken punches and given them. I've been both celebrated and condemned for speaking truth to power." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. Today, I'm beginning the most important fight of my life, not for another championship belt, not for my legacy, but for a child who helped me when medicine couldn't." He went on to reveal what the tabloids had already reported about Cassie's background, but with a personal plea that silenced the room. "This girl, who has nothing, gave me something priceless, a voice to speak clearly again, if only for a while. She asked for nothing in return. And now she's being hunted like a criminal, threatened with detention or deportation, all because she has a gift she used to help others. Muhammad leaned forward, his famous face intense with conviction. So today, Lonnie and I are announcing the establishment of the Desert Healer Foundation. Its first mission will be to provide legal protection, safe housing, education, and medical research opportunities for Cassandra Toussaint. Its broader mission will be to explore and support integrative healing approaches that conventional medicine has overlooked or dismissed. He continued, addressing the skeptics directly. I'm not here to claim miracles or challenge science. I'm here to suggest that perhaps our understanding of healing is still incomplete. That perhaps there are things a child from Haiti might know that our most advanced medical technology hasn't yet discovered. In the days that followed, the story took on dimensions that no one could have predicted. Offers of help poured in from around the world. Medical researchers from institutions as prestigious as Harvard and Johns Hopkins expressed interest in studying Cassie's techniques. Immigration attorneys volunteered to secure her legal status in the United States. And most surprisingly, people began coming forward with their own stories of encounters with the Desert Healer. Dozens of Phoenix residents who claimed the mysterious girl had helped them or their loved ones over the past 2 years, never asking for payment, often disappearing before they could even thank her. But Cassie herself remained missing, her whereabouts unknown despite an intensive search by both authorities and the alley's private investigators. Then, exactly 2 weeks after the press conference, she appeared at the service entrance of the Ailey's Scottsdale home in the middle of the night. "They're looking for me everywhere," she said when Lonnie opened the door, her young face drawn with exhaustion. "I can't help people if I'm locked up or sent back to Haiti." "You're safe now," Lonnie assured her, ushering her inside. "Muhammad and I have been preparing for this. No one will take you away or exploit you. You have our word." In the kitchen, over a simple meal of soup and bread, the first proper food Cassie had eaten in days, Muhammad explained the foundation they had established in her name, the legal protections they had secured, and the educational opportunities that awaited her. Cassie listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When Muhammad finished speaking, she asked a single question: "Will I still be able to help people?" "That's entirely up to you," Muhammad answered. "The foundation will support your gift, not exploit it. You'll have the best education, the best care, and when you're ready, if you choose, the opportunity to work with medical researchers to understand your abilities better. But you'll never be forced to use your gift or to submit to tests you don't want." For the first time since they had met her, Cassie's composed facade cracked slightly. Her eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. "My grandmother said my gift was for healing, not for fame. And she was right," Lonnie said gently. "But sometimes, to protect a gift, you need resources and support." "That's all we're offering." Cassie considered this, then nodded once, decision made. "I'll stay, but on one condition." "Name it," Muhammad said. "You have to let me help you again. Regularly. What I did wasn't permanent. Your symptoms will return without maintenance." Muhammad smiled, the familiar mischievous glint returning to his eyes. "I had a feeling you might say that, and I accept, on one condition of my own." Cassie raised an eyebrow questioningly. "That you let us help you too. Not just with legal protection and education, but with healing whatever wounds you carry. Because I suspect that those who can heal others often neglect their own pain." Something passed between them then, a recognition, an understanding that transcended age, background, and circumstance. Two fighters, acknowledging each other's battles. Cassie extended her hand, suddenly looking every bit the 13-year-old girl she was, rather than the mysterious healer. "Deal." Muhammad took her small hand in his much larger one, the tremor already beginning to return, but slowly, held at bay, by whatever extraordinary gift this child possessed. Deal. In the years that followed, the story of Muhammad Ali and the desert healer would become legend. Through the foundation they established together, Cassie would go on to work with medical researchers, helping to pioneer new approaches to neurological disorders that combined her intuitive understanding of the body's energy systems with conventional medicine. Muhammad Ali would experience several more years of improved quality of life, not a cure, as Cassie had warned from the beginning, but a significant extension of his functional abilities that allowed him to continue his humanitarian work with renewed vigor. Critics and skeptics remained, of course. Some in the medical establishment dismissed the entire phenomenon as an elaborate placebo effect. Religious leaders debated whether Cassie's abilities were divine gifts or something more problematic, but for the thousands of people whose lives were touched by the Desert Healer Foundation, particularly those with conditions conventional medicine had deemed hopeless, the debate was irrelevant. What mattered was the simple truth that sometimes healing comes from unexpected sources, that sometimes, when doctors give up, another way appears. And perhaps most importantly, that sometimes the most profound healing happens when those who have been wounded by the world find the courage to help each other. A street girl with mysterious gifts and a fallen champion fighting his final round, each recognizing in the other a fellow warrior worthy of respect. In Muhammad Ali's own words, from his final autobiography published 3 years after his encounter with Cassie, "Throughout my life, I've claimed to be the greatest. But true greatness, I've learned, often comes in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a child who reminds us that the human spirit, like the human body, has healing capacities we've only begun to understand. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in hand to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who truly live. If this touched you deeply, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.